We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 43a. The Gemara is explaining why the Mishnah has to say in detail how Hashem goes out with Bnei Yisrael to war. And the reason is because the name of Hashem and all the appellations of Hashem are munachin ba'aron. They're placed in the Aron, they're on the tablets that are in the Aron, and it actually goes out to war with them. And the Gemara continues, V'cheinu Omer, likewise it says, Vayishlach osam Moshe elef lamata latzava. It says Moshe sent them out 1,000 for a tribe to the army. Osam v'as Pinchas. It says them and Pinchas. And what does that pasuk mean? Osam elu Sanhedrin. When it says Osam, it refers to the Sanhedrin. And Pinchas, what is Pinchas? Zem Mashuach Melchama. Pinchas was the Mashuach Melchama. He was the one anointed to go out to war. Uchlei HaKodesh. And what does it mean that the Klei HaKodesh went out? Ze Aron v'luchos shavo. The Aron and the luchos that were in it, all of these were taken out literally to the area of the war. V'chatzotzros hatrua. What's chatzotzros hatrua? Elu hashofaros. That refers to the shofaros which they blew. And the Gemara continues, Tana was taught, Lo lechinam halach Pinchas lemilchama. Pinchas did not go to this war for nothing. Elalipara din avi imo. Rather, he's trying to pay back the justice of the father of his mother. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk of Hamidanim machro oso Mitzrayim. It says that the Midyanim, they sold him to Mitzrayim, talking about Pinchas's ancestor Yosef. And so Pinchas was going as a way of paying back the Midyanim for that crime. And the Gemara says, Lamemer, does this mean to say the Pinchas mi Yosef Asi, that Pinchas came from the tribe from Yosef? V'aksiv Elazar ben Aaron lokach lo mi benos Putiel. But it says that Elazar ben Aaron, he took from him the daughters of Putiel, and Pinchas would come from Elazar. Mi benos Putiel lo leisha. And what is mi benos Putiel? My lav, is it not? The Asi mi Yisro shepitem agolim lavodas kochavim. Doesn't mean that he came from Yisro. That's benos Putiel. The daughters of Putiel really means they descend from Yisro, who sacrificed agolim to Avodah Zarah, because Yisro served Avodah Zarah before he joined the Jewish people. And the Gemara says, Lo no mi Yosef. What it actually means is he took from the daughters of Putiel. Actually means from the daughters of Yosef. Shepitzbeit beyitzro. The reason why it calls Yosef Putiel is because he was able to dismiss his Yetzer Hara. He was able to conquer his Yetzer Hara. But the Gemara says, 1 second, Valo Shvatim evazanoso. But didn't the Shvatim, weren't they disgracing Pinchas with the following? Didn't they say the following about him? Re'isa ben Puti zeh. See this Ben Puti, the son of Puti. Ben shepitim avi imo agolim la'avodas kochavim. The son who the father of his mother sacrificed agolim to avodah zara. Yarog nasi mi Yisrael. Such a person who has that kind of ancestry should kill a nasi from Klal Yisrael. And so therefore you see on the contrary, really he did come from Yisrael. It wasn't from Yosef. And the Gemara says actually both were true. Ella rather, Iavua de'ime mi Yosef, if the father of his mother, meaning if the father of Pinchas's mother was mi Yosef, came from Yosef, so ime de'ime mi Yisro. So then we'll say that the mother of his mother came from Yisro. And the other way around as well, v'ime de'ime mi Yosef, if you're going to say that the mother of his mother came from Yosef, so avua de'ime mi Yisro. So the father of his mother came from Yisro. And the Gemara says, Deikanami, we have evidence to this as well. Dechsiv mi benos Putiel. It says from the daughters of Putiel, and that sounds like plural. Trey mashma, that sounds like two. And so therefore Putiel really is a reference to both. It's a reference to the fact that he was a descendant of Yisro, and also a reference to the fact that he was a descendant of Yosef, Shvamina. And the Gemara says, indeed, you do see this from the wording of the pasuk. And Rashi explains, Shepitbeit, it says that Yosef was pitbeit v'Yitzro. What does that mean? Zilzal, he degraded his Yetzer Hara, he considered like nothing. V'chavashoso v'lo chashav. He conquered it and he didn't consider it to be like anything. V'alo shvatim evazamoso, and then it said, didn't they disgrace Pinchas as follows? Kedamin and be'elohen an israfin, like it says in Sanhedrin, lefika chutzrach liyachso shem Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. It says over there the reason why we have to say his yichus, that he's Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, is because the shvatim would dismiss him. And Rashi continues, Trey Pute, the Gemara said that Putiel indicates two of the ancestors of Pinchas, mideloksiv Putel, from the fact that it doesn't say Putel, it says Putiel. Again, that sounds like plural. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. The pasuk says, V'dibru hashotrim el ha'am lemor, that the officers, they spoke to the people saying, Mioish asher bana bayis chodesh v'lo chanocho. If a person built a new house and didn't use it, Yelech v'yashav leveso v'gomer, so he should return to his house. He shouldn't fight alongside his brothers in the war. And the Mishnah now explains, whether somebody builds a house for straw, beis habakar, a house for cattle, beis ha'etzim, a house for wood, beis ha'otzaros, a warehouse, whether he builds or he purchases it or he inherits it, or whether it's given to him as a gift. In all of these cases, the individual is exempt from the war. And the Mishnah continues, the pasuk says, let's say a person, he planted a vineyard and he hasn't used it. Whether he planted a vineyard, or whether he planted 5 other kinds of trees that produce fruit. And even if they produce fruit from 5 different species, whether he plants it, whether he layers it, or whether he grafts the tree, and whether he purchases it, whether he inherits it, or whether it's given to him as a gift. And the Mishnah continues, the pasuk says, if a person betroths a woman, whether he betroths a virgin, or whether he betroths a widow, even if it's a situation where she's awaiting yibum, even if he hears that his brother died in war, so it's a situation of yibum that has just developed, in all of these cases he returns. In all of these cases, the individual does go out to the border to hear the Kohen say over the regulations of war, and they still participate in some manner. They return and they provide water and they provide food for the soldiers and they fix the roads. And the Mishnah continues, ve'elu she'enan chozer. Now in the following cases, they don't return. It's not considered enough that they're exempt from the war. Habona Beishar, if somebody builds a gate area, Achsadra, if somebody builds a veranda, Marpesis, or somebody builds a balcony, Hanotea Arba Ilani Maichel, let's say a person plants just 4 trees that produce fruit, V'chamisha Ilani Srakar, let's say 5 trees, but it's trees that don't produce fruit, Hamachzer Eskrushaso, if somebody remarries the woman that he divorced, or if you have a marriage which is really a prohibited kind of marriage, Almana l'Kohen Gadol, let's say it's an Almana marrying Kohen Gadol, again that's prohibited, or Grusha v'Chalutza l'Kohen Hedyot, a divorcee or a Chalutza marrying a Kohen Hedyot, Mamzeres or Nesina l'Yisrael, a Mamzeres or Nesina marrying a Yisrael, Bas Yisrael, a Mamzer l'Nesin, a Bas Yisrael marrying a Mamzer or Nesin, again all prohibited marriages. Lo hayachozer, for those kind of marriages, he does not return from the war. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af habone bayis al mechono, even somebody who builds a house, but he already had this house and he took it down, he rebuilt it in the same fashion that it was originally, lo hayachozer. For that, he doesn't return from the war, he's not exempt from the war. Rabbi Eliezer says, Af habona beis levenim b'Sharon, even if he builds a house of brick in Sharon, lo hayachozer, he doesn't return, he's not exempt from the war, because that's not considered a house that is going to be able to stand. And the Mishnah continues, Elu shein zazon mimakoma. Now the following, they don't move from their place at all, meaning they don't even need to go out to the border to hear the words of the Kohen. They are completely exempt from the war. Bona bayis v'chanocho, let's say a person built a house and he's still in the first year of the use. Not takerem v'chilolo, let's say he planted a vineyard, again he's using the fruits, but it's still that first year that he's using the fruits. Hanose esarusaso, let's say he marries his betrothed. Hakones as yevemto, let's say he marries the yevemto, let's say he marries his brother's wife after his brother died. Shenemar, but like it says in the pasuk about these situations, Naki yia lebeso shana echos. It says he has to be totally free to be with it, to be with his wife for 1 year. Lebeso, zebeso, yia, zekarmel, lebeso means his house. Yia refers to his vineyard. V'simaches ishto zu ishto. V'simaches ishto refers to his wife, like we said. Asher lokach lahavi es yevimto. It says asher lokach means it doesn't only have to be a traditional type of wife. It could be yevimto as well. It could be a sister-in-law as well in terms of a situation of yibum. In those cases, ein maspikim mayim umazon ve'ein misakron nesadrachim. They don't have to participate in the war at all. They don't have to provide water and food, and they don't have to fix the roads. And we will see a few of the Rashis over here. Afa bona bayis, even if somebody builds a house, levenim b'Sharon, of bricks in Sharon, makamu sheshmo Sharon. This is an area called Sharon. V'yena karka yafel levenim, and that land is not good for bricks. V'lo hava dvar kayom. It's not something that's going to stand. Shepamayim tzarech lechadsha b'shav hashanim. For every 7 years, 2 times, he's going to have to rebuild it. He's going to have to make it stronger, and therefore that does not count as something that exempts him. V'elu she'ein zazon mimakom. And then it said the following cases, they don't have to move from their place at all, they're completely exempt. The Hanach de Le'el, because the earlier cases, Holchen Ad L'Svar, they have to go to the border, V'sham Shomin Divrei Kohen, and they have to listen there to the words of the Kohen, V'chozrin Min HaMarachel Eretz Yisrael, and then they return to Eretz Yisrael, V'enam V'chozrim Levateim, but they don't return to their houses. Ela Oskin B'sipok Mayim U'mazon L'Holchem L'chama, they have to deal with supplying water and food to those who are going out to war. Ve'elo ein zazin mimakomen, but these individuals that we're about to list, they don't move from their place at all. Afilu loleches arasvar, they don't even need to go to the border of Veloshav al pi Kohen and then return through the words of the Kohen. Habona bayis v'chanacho, if somebody builds a house and he has used it, v'lo darbo adayin shana, but he hasn't used it yet for a year. V'chein hanotea keren v'chilo, similarly a person planted a vineyard and he's using the fruits, v'adayin lo avra shana revius olav shlema, but the fourth year, which is the year he begins to start using the fruits, that hasn't been a full fourth year yet. Naki iya lebeso b'shvil beso, so he's free to go to his house. Yiyeh ribuyehu, the word yiyeh is an inclusion and includes other cases as well. Hosef lachavaya cheres lios kazu, and so therefore the word yiyeh includes another kind of scenario that's referring to the fact that not only his house but even a vineyard would exempt him from the war. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, V'dibru hashotrim, it says that the officers speak, Yachol devarim shalatzman. I might think that this part of the pasuk is talking about words that they say independently. They're not simply repeating the words of the Mashuach Melchama, Kishu Omer, but when the pasuk goes on to say, V'yosvu hashotrim, that the shotrim add the following words, Harei devarim shalatzman Omer, so we already have their own words that they're saying. Hamani mekayim v'dibru hashotrim, so what does it mean when the pasuk says earlier that the shotrim speak? B'divrei Mashuach Melchama hakasam medaber. That part of the pasuk, we're talking about the words that the shotrim are repeating. The Mashuach Melchama said those words initially, and the shotrim repeat the same words. Haketzad, how so? Kohen medaber v'shoter mashmiya. The Kohen speaks, and the shoter, he declares it loudly so the people can hear. Tani Chada, we learned in one brayso, Kohen medaber v'shoter mashmiya. It says the Kohen speaks, and the shoter is the one who says it loudly so the people can hear. V'tanya idach, and we learned in another brayso, Kohen medaber v'kohen mashmiya, that the Kohen speaks, and another Kohen is the one who says it loudly. V'tanya idach, and we learned in another brayso, shoter medaber v'shoter mashmiya, that it's the shoter. A shoter speaks, and there's another shoter that says it loudly. Amar Abaye says, Haketzad, how so? How do we reconcile all these different psukim? And the answer is there are different parts of the speech that are said by different individuals. From the part of the pasuk that says v'nigash until v'dibru, that's the Kohen speaking, and that's a Kohen that is saying it loudly. V'dibru ad v'yosfu, from the words of the pasuk of v'dibru until v'yosfu. So those words, that part of the speech, Kohen medaber v'shoter mashmiya, the Kohen says it and the shoter says it loudly. V'yosfu v'elach, and then from v'yosfu v'elach, from v'yosfu and onward, shoter medaber v'shoter mashmiya. The shoter, a shoter is the one who says it, and a shoter is the one who says it loudly. And Rashi over here says, Mi v'nigash ad v'dibru, from where the pasuk says the word v'nigash until v'dibru, dahainu shema Yisrael atem kravim. That's the part of the pasuk which talks about Shema Yisrael. Listen, Yisrael, you're going to war, ad lahoshia eschem, until it says lahoshia eschem. So again, from v'nigash until v'dibru, the Kohen says it, and a Kohen is the one who says it loudly. And then we have from the word v'dibru until v'yosfu, and we'll take a look at the pasuk over there. The pasuk says v'dibru hashotrim elam lemor miyoish asher bona bayis chodesh v'lo chanacho. That whole section is said by the Kohen and then is repeated by the shotrim. And then the pasuk goes on to say v'yosvu hashotrim l'davar elam, that the shotrim add on the following v'amru, when they say miyoish hayare v'rach halevav yelech v'yoshav leveso. That's already the words of the shotrim independently. That's not what the shotrim are repeating from the Mashuach Melchama. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Asher Bon, it says that he built, Ein li el Asher Bon, I only know if he built the house, Lokach v'yarash v'nitan lo b'matana, if he purchased it, let's say he inherited it, or it was given to him as a gift, minayin, from where do we know that also counts to exempt him from war? Talmud lomer miho ish asher bona bayis, it says miho ish, extra words in the pasuk, and therefore it includes these other fashions of obtaining the house. Ein li el bayis, I only know a house, minayin l'rabos beis hateven ubeis habakar ubeis ha'etzim. How do we know the house for straw and for cattle and for wood? Ubeis ha'otzaros, at the warehouse. Talmud lomer asher bona mikol makom. The pasuk says asher bona, and that teaches us any kind of house that's used for any of these purposes. Yachol shani mar ba'af habona beis sharach sadro mar pesas. Now I might think that we even include, let's say the person builds a gateway, or he builds a veranda, or he builds a balcony. Talmud lomar, so the pasuk says bayis, it says a house. Ma bayis haroi ladira. The word bayis indicates an area which is fit to be lived in. Af kol haroi ladira. So too it has to be something which is fit to be lived in. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, bayis, when the pasuk says house, kimashmo, we should understand it the way a house is normally understood, meaning it is for humans to live in. And the pasuk could have said lo chanach, it could have said that he didn't dedicate, v'lo chanacho. Why does it say lo chanacho instead? Prat legazlin. That comes to exclude a situation of a robber, a person who doesn't really own the house. And the Gemara says, Lema delok Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Let us say that this opinion is not like Rabbi Yossi Aglili. The ear of Yossi Aglili, because where's Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Amar, he says, V'rach halevav zeha misyari, that when it says in the pasuk rach halevav, this is somebody who's afraid because he did averus, and somebody who's a robber did averus, and that should exempt him from the war. And Rashi explains, the Gemara said mi ha'ish, the fact that the pasuk says mi ha'ish, that includes even, let's say, purchasing a house, not only building it. Ribuyu, that's an inclusion. Dematzi lemichtav mi asher bana. It could have just said mi asher bana. The ha'ish is extra. Umidalok siv asher bayis bana, from the fact that it doesn't phrase it asher bayis bana, derosh bei bana mikal makam. We understand bana means it doesn't have to be a traditional house. It can be these other kinds of houses as well. V'haidech siv bayis, and so what does it say house for? Lemu'ute beis shar achsadra umir pesas. That's to exclude the gateway and the veranda and the balcony. Sheim asuyim ledrisas regel v'lo ru'uyim lador b'hem. Those are made only to walk through. They're not fit to live in at all. Beis shar, beis kanisas shar ha'chatzir. Again, like we said, the area where you enter the chatzir, the gateway. Lestofe sham shomer ha'pesach. You put over there the guard. V'lo chanacho midalok siv chanach have a miyuta. Chanacho lozev v'lo la'acher. The word chanacho actually is an exclusion. It means this one and not in another case. Prat legozel bias, that comes to exclude a situation of somebody who stole the house. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis.